peace between the United States and Iran without solving the nuclear issue. And I think the more of these problems are brought to the table for negotiation, I think the possibility is there to make perhaps a lasting peace for the region. But it will take patience. And I'm hoping that the Trump administration has the appropriate patience. They certainly have the wisdom, and I believe they have the will if left to their own devices and not influenced by third or fourth parties.
Since you talked about the agreement, the efforts for an agreement, what is the key issue right now, according to your views, in order to reach an agreement, a first agreement? What is the key element?
I think it's become confused, if I'm honest with you. Before we were talking about no nuclear weapons and certain things on regional players, and now there seems to be a shift, more focusing on not just a nuclear weapon capability, but enrichment, etc., etc. I think, first of all, that's a very important question. We need to identify exactly what it is we want, and then we can start negotiating on it. When the requirements are so fluid, I think it becomes very difficult to make any meaningful relation.
Why are you saying they're fluent? They're different
Well,
views?
because I remember in the very early days of the conflict, all we heard was no nuclear weapons, no nuclear weapons, no nuclear weapons. Then the narrative started changing in the Western media, and then it became enrichment, and then it became missiles, and I think that this changing red lines is, I don't think it's helpful. I think there needs to be a clear plan. What do you want? How do you achieve it? I don't think it's particularly complicated. I just think it's difficult.
It's difficult. And did you see different views and different agendas from Israel and the United States?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking to Iranians, Kurdish Iranians in Iran, even targeting is different. The normal Iranian people can tell if this strike was an Israeli strike or this strike was an American strike.
Now, about Kurdistan and this situation.
Could I say something else on the Iranian
Go ahead,
conflict?
yes.
So, you know, I'm a real student of history. And for 650 years, the Roman Empire fought the Persian Empire. And do you know what happened? There was never a victor. The Romans would have, every time, they would have military successes. Every single time. They were never able to conquer the Persian Empire. The Persians were an empire like the Romans were. They weren't fiefdoms, they weren't tribes. The Romans had a culture that was admired many times by the people they conquered, their gods, their technology, their law. Persia had all that. Is any of this sounding familiar? Then what happened, sir? Every time the Romans, with their superior military, would make inroads into Iran, what would the Persians do? They would use their geography, they would use financial conflict, and they would simply wait them out. They would wait till there was a political upheaval in Rome, till there were assassinations in the Senate, until the situation degraded in Rome. And thus, for 650 years, this continued.
Same message, huh?
It is exactly the same message.
So earlier, when the Iran conflict started, you spoke to President Trump, to Foreign Minister Araghchi. Of course, the priorities, the necessary steps, not this region to be drawn in this conflict. So how do you evaluate the implications today, and what are these necessary steps to be taken?
I think that we're Kurds, and we're Iraqi Kurds. We live in Iraq. And the irony is the winner of this conflict and the loser of the conflict will be Iraq, before Iran, before the United States. So as Iraqis, what do we have to do? We have to make this region as stable as possible. We have to make our friends hurt each other as less as they can. And I think that's the role the PUK played. The PUK played a great role in local deconflictions, in more understanding each other's cultures, and in understanding the different parties' desires and real red lines. And I think this is the beauty of Kurdistan and Iraq, that we can be the bridge between these different countries. I commend the Pakistani government for what they've been able to achieve, but inside I'm a little bit hurt, because I think we should have been doing that. That should have been Iraq's job. It's Iraq that partners with the United States. It's Iraq and Kurdistan that is neighbors with Iran. And that really should have been Iraq's role. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic for this new government in Iraq. I firmly believe that they have a vision of not only looking east, but having to look west. And they have a real vision about our own sovereignty and being Iraqis for Iraq. And I'm very excited to be part of this. And we have a great Prime Minister, we have a great President, Speaker of Parliament, everything. There's a real team now in Iraq, and I'm very optimistic for it.
Explain us, what was the nature of discussion with President Trump, Mr. Araghchi? At the first, let me explain you something. We were concerned in Europe and some other parts in the world that maybe the region would be drawn in this conflict. It was a dangerous situation. Can you explain us how sensitive it was to play a balance between the two without drawing in?
It was, you know, my phone call with Mr. Trump and with His Excellency Araghchi, I've spoken in length. It was a meet and greet. It was a quick briefing of how the conflict was and how they expected it to be a long conflict, etc., etc., etc. But I think at that point, leaders in Kurdistan and Iraq had to look at the situation and look at what's best for once, what's best for us. What do we do? As optimistic as I was by the PUK's role, my brother, other friends in the PUK, myself to a lesser extent, getting out our messaging in the media, getting out our messaging through diplomatic channels. And I really think we were able to make a difference there. With Turkey, we had a great coordination with Turkey and the Kurdish groups, and I think we were able to prevent a quite major disaster together. So as that was happening, as there was so much pressure at that time, I was actually invigorated because I saw that you can actually change things. The thing that disappointed me at that time was certain political leaders seemed to be just watching television. You know, we didn't have any cabinet meetings. We didn't have any leadership meetings between PUK and KDP. It was impossible to arrange these things, and it would have been nice to do that, just if for nothing else, so that the people know that we're meeting, we're discussing them, we're making plans to protect them. Instead of us unilaterally having to work certain issues, I think we would have had more impact if we had have worked certain issues together. This was the disappointment of the conflict from a local perspective. Internationally, my concern is that Mr. Trump won't be allowed to make a deal. I believe Mr. Trump can make a deal. I think he, if left to his own devices, would make a deal. And I think the deal would be reasonable. And I'm hoping that his patience with all sides will come to an end, frankly. And he will say, I've had enough, I'm going to deal with this now. And I think when he gets to that conclusion, I think there's a real opportunity to make a deal with Iran. And I think a deal that will make this area, and Soleimani in particular, extremely wealthy and very prosperous and very stable. But like His Excellency said, there are fundamental issues behind this conflict. And unless you resolve those fundamental issues, you're just giving a headache tablet to the guy with a headache, when in reality he's dehydrated. You're just masking it. So I'd rather they gave him some water than gave him the paracetamol.
Now, talk to us about your relation, the region's relation with Tehran, with Iran.
I have fantastic.
How close is it?
Very close.
After this, Tehran is weakened, is strengthened. Explain us.
We have great relationships with Tehran. We have wonderful relationships with Washington. Qobad and I just came back from DC. Now, I'm very happy to say that we're getting very good relations with our Turkish brothers. And I hope this will continue. And I think if you look at this, we're a small political party in the grand scheme of things. And these 3 or 4 countries were basically at war. And we were able to keep a great balance between them all. We set red lines, we set what you can do, what you can't do. We were able to work on this issue. So if we can do that, just as a small party, Iraq can do that, the other countries can do that. I just think it will take bravery. Iran is weakened militarily, yes, you could argue that. But you could argue in other ways they're actually more united, they're stronger. The asymmetrical warfare that they're fighting is very obvious, and there is something else as well that our dear friend, the former Prime Minister, alluded to. War is different now. With a $20,000 missile, a drone, you can make the enemy send several $1 million worth of ordnance just to bring that down. That's going to be a bigger problem than the Straits of Hormuz. That's a financially unwinnable war. And the Iranians can't win the war. So it's obvious there has to be some kind of peace. And I think the best peace is when both sides walk in with their heads held high and leave with their heads held high.
Explain us the nature now and the situation regarding the peace process with Turkey. You met recently, 2 days ago, with the ambassador of Turkey in Iraq. It was a good meeting.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. How do you assess at this moment the peace process?
I think the peace process will continue. I think the peace process will be successful, and we affirmed our willingness and ability to help with the peace process, both on the Kurdish side and now, inshallah, God willing, on the Turkish side. And there are a lot of things that we can do together. We were talking about our brothers, the Turkmen, and how all minorities should be represented equally and fairly. And I think these are projects we can work together in Baghdad. I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic.
Okay, what is the key in order to move forward on this? What is the sensitivities of Ankara on this? And how important is this discussion about bringing all armed groups under the authority of the Iraqi state?
Oh, this is a fundamental, essential factor that will signify the success or failure of this government. I think it's absolutely essential. Some people in Iraq still think we were neutral in this war. Ladies and gentlemen, we were not neutral in this war. We fired missiles at every single country around us without the okay and the authority of the government. This situation cannot be allowed to continue. If we decide as a government to declare war, fine, we must face the consequences. But it's not the job of a group to decide unilaterally for us. This is why I Ghazali, Haji Shibal, and those brothers that were able to see that the future of Iraq is a unified Iraq, an Iraq with its own rules and regulations. And there's no need to have your own army. You can be the Iraqi army. And I think that will be the success.
Iraq's political future has entered a new phase.
Yes.
How important is the cooperation between Erbil and Baghdad? What is the key element for this?
It is colossally important. It is massively important. And I think that we need a new direction from Erbil to Baghdad.
So what direction? Explain
I think
us.
we need to have more interaction. I think Erbil, not just the KRG, but certainly the KRG, our brothers and sisters in the KDP also, they need to reevaluate their relationship with Baghdad. And they need to come to the fundamental understanding that they still have not understood. And that is a peaceful, calm, prosperous Iraq is a peaceful, calm, prosperous Kurdistan. It is not the opposite. Stop betting on Iraq falling apart and then us dreaming that magically Kurdistan will become a heaven. This is the literal opposite of the reality. And I think the sooner everybody can understand this. Look, I'm in Baghdad so many times a month because I like going there. They're my friends. I visit them because they're my friends. There's some of them here, all my friends there. They're so easy to work with. They just demand honesty, integrity, and respect them like you expect them to respect you. It's relationships. Yeah. Kaka, this is the Middle East. It's all about relationships. Tea, coffee, baklava.
Of course, it's not only baklava, since you mentioned, all right. But it is only a matter of trust, or where the two parties should focus on.
Well, what priorities look, how can you build trust? How can you even build a relationship if I can't even be bothered to come to your house? So every time I come to your house, I want something. I want this. You did that wrong. How does that build a relationship? How does that help you move forwards? And if you did the same to me, that's not a relationship. That's just, it's a word I'd rather not use.
How influential is on this cooperation between Erbil and Baghdad the influence of external parties outside? I
don't think it's influential at all. It's as influential as we allow it to be. I have been in a very strange situation the last few months of talking to the Iranians and talking to the Americans and talking to the Turkish brothers who shared our problems of trying to keep the situation calm. And you can influence that. Don't let them influence you. Don't let them pull you into the issue. Try to help them resolve the issues. You know, my father would have meetings with the Politburo. He would listen to everybody's advices, but there's 20 different advices. You can't listen to all of them. He would decide which was good. Sometimes he wouldn't listen to any of us. And that's just how it is. I think we overcomplicate it. Because you hear the opinion of a country, it doesn't make you subservient to that country.
So what delays, explain us what delays the formation of the Kurdistan regional government?
What does what, sorry?
What is, why so far, after so many long time? It has a long time that you tried with the other parties to form a government here. What delays this process?
Honestly, I think what delays this process is the inability of certain people in the KDP to acknowledge the new reality of the world. And the new reality of the world is, actually, it's not even new. Kurdistan is not a princedom. Kurdistan is a democratic, not country, but country, and it needs to be governed like that. And the fundamental understanding of what a coalition government is, I don't think it exists in certain people's heads. And that will be their undoing, not my undoing, not your undoing. To continue to make policies and to continue to have a strategy, if you can call it a strategy, that's based on incorrect foundations, it's impossible to be successful. And you'll see that. And you are seeing it. You're seeing cracks in the system. You're seeing disagreements, all of which are bad for the PUK. All of which are bad for Kurdistan. Me, I want a strong, look, I have a partnership now in Kurdistan with a new generation, strong, young party, fantastic. How much better would it be if that was also the KDP? Because why can I sit with Muhammad Salahuddin Bahadin and he can be like a wise uncle and advise us? Why can't we do that with Kak Masoud? It's not logical to me. I think what they have in Baghdad, where they have this leadership framework, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it should be done here. It should be done in Kurdistan. We should all meet together. All of the Kurdish parties should have a high council. This is something we've proposed repeatedly. We've proposed, and it's just not being received. And I think that there will be no government in Kurdistan if the government in Kurdistan is going to be like the last one. And I really need everybody to understand this. And it's not me saying that. I urge you, you're here for a few days, walk around the streets, talk to normal civilians. Nobody wants that whatever that was that passed for a government.
What has to be changed?
Understanding of partnership, the understanding of Baghdad, the understanding of the security situation in the Middle East, and honestly, frankly, certain personalities in the government. They need to be promoted.
Okay. Finally, is there any one message that would the international leaders, all the leaders here, the investors, all the attendees here, the policymakers attending this Delphi Forum, to take away from Soleimani, what that message would be? One message.
One message, I'm kind of stealing His Excellency's thunder, but it is something that I say a lot. Soleimani is one of the richest cities in the world. And come and be part of that wealth. Soleimani's wealth is not gas or oil. Genuinely, it is its people. It is its highly educated, highly motivated, multilingual, and genuinely honorable population. And I would urge any country, any business, any institution to take advantage of that. But I am going to kind of break your one message rule a bit, if you don't mind. I would like to apply that to all of Kurdistan and all of Iraq. Our education rates are really high in all of Kurdistan. In Duhok, in Erbil, in Suleimania, it's the same in Iraq. And it's this is our true wealth. And it's not being taken advantage of. And I hope it will. And with the support of our people, with the wisdom of our elders, and with God's help, this is what we will do this next 4 years in the new government here in Kurdistan. Or there will be no government in Kurdistan.
Very important messages. Mr. President, Mr. Jalal Talabani, thank you so much. Thank you. It was an interesting discussion. Now we'll continue with the next program.
Oh,
very nice.
I enjoyed that very much. Thank you.
Really, it was
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.